Hello everybody, Peter Abbott, the British Consul General to New England here. Welcome to another 2-Minute Tea at Diplomacy. I am joined by former Supreme Court Justice Stephen Breyer. Stephen, it's wonderful to have you with us. You were on the court from 1994 to 2022?
Yes, that's right.
Is that right? And a former Marshall Scholar.
Yes.
Tell us how the Marshall Scholarship changed your life.
Well, the major change was I married an English woman, and we've been married for 56 years, and there's never been a dull moment. And I say often, she's heard me, I say, and for 56 years, the word divorce never passed our lips. Murder? Yes. That's the...
well, the English do murder very nicely.
Yes.
And what surprised you most about the UK when you were there?
It was fun. I think for 2 years, I wrote my parents. I was, I guess, I don't know, 22, 23 when I left. I said, the last 2 years I've enjoyed every minute. Why? Because there's a good sense of humor. Because and what we would do, and God, the weather wasn't great always, but what you'd do when the weather wasn't so great, you'd go to a friend's room, you'd have a cup of coffee, you have some tea, invite some friends, and you'd plot. Mm-hmm. Now, what kind of a plot? I mean, you might say for my next meeting with my tutor, because what you did is you wrote essays and read them to your tutor, I'm going to have a blank sheet of paper. And I'm just going to pretend I'm reading. Well, the tutor figured that out after about 1 second. It didn't work too well. But nonetheless, it was fun. It was just fun.
You mentioned tea and you mentioned coffee. I assume some harder drinks were involved.
There were, and that was a surprising thing. Because the surprising thing, after a pretty short time, you really got to enjoy lunch at the pub. And why? Well, they had things I'd never heard of. Veal ham and egg pie. Scotch egg, which is like an egg with a sausage around it, and cheese, very good cheese, cheddar cheese, and a half pint of beer. But in the summer, you'd have a shandy, and in the end, you'd have sand on the lawn, and you'd have drinks sometimes. But it was just fun.
So you were in the UK in the 1960s, is that right?
59, 61.
59, 61. I mean, a time of huge social change in the US and in the UK. Did you see any of that? I mean,
well, I think there was an election going on.
There was an election,
yes.
That's right.
And I think Mr. Macmillan won, didn't he win that year?
He did.
And we went to a lot of rallies with my friends, Paul Dodick, who's here, and various others, and they heckle a lot in England.
They do.
More than here.
Yeah, they're very unpolite.
Yes, that's right. But I sort of enjoyed that. And whenever Mr. Macmillan spoke, some of the students would say, what about the groundnut scheme? Or maybe it was the other. Maybe it was the Labor Party that did the groundnut scheme.
Yeah, it was.
So we never knew what the groundnut scheme was. But we were certain if there was a Labor speaker, we were supposed to say, and what about the groundnut scheme?
Did you go to the Oxford Union?
Yes.
Where they were speaking?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think an American one, it was named Joe Tratner. He was called Honest Joe Tratner because he had all his friends sneak in the back window in the night of the election, and they somehow got him to win. And I had a great friend who died, whose name is Philip Whitehead, and he made a career of making documentaries. And great. We'd go to his room in the afternoon sometimes, and we'd have all kinds of discussions about everything, and it was interesting. I made my career in law. Well, where does that come from? What is it the United States? I say this a lot. What does the good old USA have to contribute to the world? I said there used to be three things, and before 2008, it was investments. A lot of people respected that. That's gone down a little bit. Jazz music, absolutely. And my son-in-law works for Wynton Marsalis. Yeah, he loves it. And also a certain human rights Constitution, Declaration of Independence. We respect human rights, equal protection for people, rule of law. Free trade to a degree, and doing things together. Where does that come from? Magna Carta. You see, Magna Carta. And we celebrate probably that more here than they do in Britain. Well, but that's where it comes from. And that's why during my first years I can remember, World War II, I can remember a little bit, blackout shades coming down. Well, it was Britain.
Well, there are some wonderful memorials to the Magna Carta. So, of course, the John F. Kennedy Memorial is at Runnymede in the UK, and in Jamestown in Virginia, I was always struck. There's a plaque that was put there by the Law Society. Talking about the shared heritage of the Magna Carta.
Oh well, World War
common law, and that the settlers brought with them when they came
over here.
Do you think there's? I mean, sort of looking forwards now. Do you think that shared heritage in common law, in the Magna Carta, in those things that you talked about, should be more of a continued framework, really guiding UK, US, and potentially the Commonwealth as well, guiding those kind of collaborations?
Absolutely. I mean, I even go look at. I saw a French film, a documentary, some years ago, which was mostly captured from the Germans in World War II, the Japanese, American film too, and also French and also British. Well, you see, that was just a terrible period for people. But the British just did it. Not talking about it necessarily, but you just stand up to it, and they did, and I think Americans appreciate that. I last night, my goodness, my 13-year-old granddaughter was talking. They're learning about World War II and after. I said, you can get right today. Go to YouTube and put in Churchill and Roosevelt, and you will get Churchill's speeches. Amazing. And I can tell you what I asked her. Do you want to hear it? I mean, Churchill gave Wendell Willkie, his opponent in 1940, this was before we got into the war, a letter to give to Churchill. And in that letter, he quoted Longfellow, who's only a few blocks away from here, his house, the poet. And the poem he quoted was, sail on, O ship of state. Sail on, O Union, strong and great. Humanity, with all its fears, with all its hopes for future years, is hanging breathless on thy fate. Churchill says, that's what the President of the United States sent to me. Now, what do I say to the President in reply? What I did say was, Mr. President, thank you, give us the tools, and we will finish the job. So I said to Angela...
Oh, it gives me goosebumps.
Yes. I said to Angela, my granddaughter, I said, well, they're both very, very good. Which did you prefer? She thought, and she said, Churchill's. That was it. That was Lend-Lease.
He was an extraordinary man. I mean, obviously his oratory was extraordinary, but he had an amazing vision. Last week I was at the Computer Science and Artificial Intelligence Lab at MIT, and they're in this beautiful new building designed by Frank Gehry. You've probably seen it. It looks amazing, but it leaks all over the place. But that building replaced something called Building 20, which was where the magnetron, which started the whole basis of radar cooperation during Second World War, was brought from the University of Birmingham, because Churchill said, we have better technology in the UK, but we don't have the means to scale it. And so let's bring it to MIT and get the Americans to use our technology and scale it. And they did, and they produced the radar that basically ensured Allied superiority of the Atlantic and helped support the convoys and everything.
Yes.
It's amazing. I mean, these stories are amazing.
It is. Well, what was a very good movie about the spot, they captured all the code.
Oh, the Enigma.
The Enigma machine. The Enigma machine. Yeah. That was a great movie, great film.
Yeah.
And certainly worked.
Well, so tell me, if I can, I'll ask you a little bit about your wife. She was a member of the British aristocracy, and I assume getting to know her gave you a sort of an entree into a whole set of scenarios that you might not have imagined being an American growing up in California. Was that about right? Did it surprise you?
What struck me the most is, and I think that's probably generally true, in England, in the UK, you have people treat each other as people. you might have been born in a castle, or you might have been born in a coal mine. What was that Beyond the Fringe thing where he says, oh, we were pretty poor, or we lived down in the sewer. And
walked uphill to school both ways.
That's right. But whoever you are who you are. You are a person, and you act decently or you don't. Yeah. And we hope you will act decently. And we hope you don't have to recite the Magna Carta, but you have to understand it. And even if you don't use the words Magna Carta, you have to understand the importance of human liberty. You have to understand the importance of treating people equally. So that's one of the things I thought was good about Britain. You don't talk about it, you just do it. And I think that is also true to a considerable degree in America. You just do it. And that's what those old Western movies are about. those old Western movies where they went out there and they just, we hope, behaved decently. Some did not.
Yeah.
Some did not.
But you might add that to your list of things that America has given the world. I mean, that sense of innovation and creativity and can-do attitude, which I think is quite different here from maybe in the UK. Sort of
that we can do it. That was what I liked President Obama saying that. Yes, we can. Yes, we can. And God, sometimes you can't. but nonetheless,
you should try.
Yes, of course.
You should try.
Of course. Yes, we can do it. And sometimes we do. But Churchill did say, at one point he said, America always gets things right after trying every other possibility. There is something in that too.
Speaking of presidents, did you always, or did you ever think that you wanted to become a Supreme Court justice? You were nominated by President Clinton.
That's right,
weren't you? What was it like going to the White House, getting that call, going to the White House? How did it feel to you? Well,
most lawyers think they'd like to be on the Supreme Court, but I mean, lightning has to strike to become a federal judge. It has to strike, and to be on the Supreme Court, if you're honest about it, you say there are a lot of other people who are qualified too. You might hope you're qualified, but so are a lot of people. And there we are. Lightning has to strike twice. And the year before, I had not been selected. I'd been considered, but I had not been selected. And so when there was another vacancy, and I knew that President Clinton was considering me because the news said it all the time. And then they said now he's, I think it was Bernard Shaw at, I think, what was it, C-SPAN or something. But he said, I think he selected Judge Breyer in Boston, but nobody talked to me.
Was this the first you'd heard?
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, it was the first I heard, actually, and then I heard nothing. And Joanna's mother was not well, so she was in England with her mother. And she called and she said, have you heard anything? Because they listed in the paper, 5 people who were being considered. And have you heard? I said, no, I haven't heard anything. Just then, my assistant comes in and she says, the White House wants to talk to you. And the president wants to speak to you. I thought that was a good sign. But previously he called me the year before to say I was not selected. Which
was very good of him.
Yeah, it was actually. And so in any case, he said, his voice was, I had a feeling things were good. And there we are. And then he said to come down to the White House on Friday, and we came there with Joanna and the 2 children, and we slept in the Lincoln bedroom, and we went jogging in the morning. And no, it was rather extraordinary. I agree, and but which is also true. And he said this when I talked to him. He said, there's going to be a lot of hurrahs and so forth, and congratulations, all that. But he said, you'll get used to that after a while, and it goes away. So you better like the job. And what I did learn in the first 2 or 3 years, maybe 4 years, you go around nervous as a cat. Why? Because how do I know I can do this? I've been thinking how I could, but now you have to do it.
Are you saying that even Supreme Court justices have imposter syndrome from time to time?
Yes. Probably all of them. Can we do it? And then after a while, you get used to it, and there are a lot of mores and sort of ways of behaving, and after a while, you think, what is the big benefit of this job? And it is that you have to give your best to each. It's like being a doctor in a sense. A doctor has to take each case and has to give his or her best to that person, and you have to do the same thing for each case. And that is a privilege. As you get older, you see that it is more and more a privilege. And there we are.
So much has been said and written about the Supreme Court in recent years. I'm not going to put you on the spot and ask you about that, but over the sort of nearly 30 years that you sat on the bench, could you see a kind of a culture change in the way that people thought about the Supreme Court and the way that you interacted with the executive, with society?
Not necessarily. Yes and no. I mean, not necessarily with the executive, but Byron White, who was a member of the court for many years, he said, with each new appointment, it's a new court. Because we get along well. We may get into disagreements in conference about a case. Nobody shouts. Nobody says mean things about the other person. And afterwards, we have lunch. And we get on well. And I once said to Chief Justice Rehnquist at lunch, my goodness, here we are having a perfectly pleasant conversation. And just a few minutes ago in the conference, and he said, I know what you mean. In the conference, half the court thought the other half was crazy. He said that's what it was. But we did get on, and people don't insult each other, and they do their work.
Well, it's rather like politicians. I have the pleasure of meeting British parliamentarians from all sorts of different parties. And it's extraordinary when you see them in a sort of social setting, how they're incredibly collegiate and friendly, and but then you see them at Prime Minister's Question Time, and
Well, that is a problem. That is a problem. It's a problem. I mean, I worked for a couple of years for Senator Kennedy, for Ted Kennedy, and he used to say the change that's coming, and this was some years ago, the change that's coming is the jet plane. And the problem with the jet plane for the politicians is you have to be home.
You have to go home.
You have to be home from Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and you only see the Congress Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and you don't get to really know your fellow members of Congress. And that is a problem. Because Kennedy also said, he said, everyone here has somewhere inside of him a desire to help people in this country. Now, they may think very different things about the appropriate way to do it, but
motivation is the same.
Yeah, but if there isn't that feeling, why are you in government service? Why do it?
Yeah.
And I say that to law students. I'll say, you want to make money, go into business. I'm not saying you'll succeed and do it, but you have a chance. But don't go into government. And don't go. I mean, but I want them to go into government. So I say, I hope that you will. I hope that you will have a chance because of the satisfaction of you're in a community, and you want to help that community, and that gives you enormous satisfaction, even though perhaps it will not enrich you for.
So you're at Harvard Law School now.
Yeah, I'm now teaching.
You're
right.
teaching.
I retired last year.
How?
I taught before. I taught 40
How does it? I mean, it's obviously a complete sort of not a complete change of pace. I suppose there is something sort of quite academic about being on the Supreme Court in the sense it's sort of quite cerebral. But
it's different. It's different. It's different. I think in this sense when you're a professor, as I was for 13 years before becoming a judge. I was a judge for 40 years. I was 13 years here in Boston. At the Federal Appeals Court, and then I was 28 years down in Washington. All right. When you're a judge, you are looking at a problem that is not yet resolved. And you've got to look to the future and work out how, under the law, should this problem be resolved. When you're a teacher, you're looking at things that were done.
Yeah.
And you're trying to order them and
explain them.
and explain them to people. Yeah. But the students are great fun. And I like the students.
So I'm going to ask the final question for you, a completely different tack. Do you know that you are the subject of a very successful and viral meme?
No.
Are you aware of this?
No.
When you're sitting there and your successor has been appointed, and I think President Biden turns to you and says something wonderful about you, and you react in this wonderful way. Do you remember this? You
I
clap
do
your hands
remember
to your face.
It was the State of the Union.
It was the State of the Union.
Yeah, but it was embarrassing.
It was, but
I mean, I was very pleased, and I remember exactly.
well, there's a
Is that
time
here?
We're
Yeah,
going to show
everybody
you.
stood
We're
up.
going to show you. Here we go. Here we go. You see?
Oh yeah, that's it. That's right. We didn't expect him to be talking about me, and we were sitting there. And
But when young people want to, I say young people, when people want to express gratitude on social media and in their messages,
Is that
they
what
will
they do?
put a very short little video of you
Really?
doing this.
Really? I didn't
So you
know
see,
that.
you're famous. I mean, well,
I
you're
didn't
obviously
know that.
famous anyway, but you were.
no, I was with some younger kids or whatever, and we were talking about language that they use now, and. I don't know if I said, when something's good, what do you say? They say it's Riz.
Riz.
Yeah, I said, what's Riz? And she knows Riz is its charisma, and if it's what is it, something W Riz or L Riz. L Riz is bad, and there's another one that's good, but I can't.
G Riz.
No, what is it? It's
We don't know. No.
I don't know. Anyway, and then the other thing, when they do something wrong, you sort of look at them. And my granddaughter got up from the table and she was doing a dance on the other side of the room. So I said, I've learned what to say, Angela. I'm going to look at you like this and say, bombastic side-eye. And she thought that was the funniest thing she ever heard in her entire life.
Well, maybe you say bombastic side eye will become the next meme.
Well, it probably already is.
Justice Breyer, Stephen, thank you so much for joining us. It's
Thank
been
you.
absolutely terrific talking to you as part of our 2-minute tea diplomacy.
Good.
Really
Good luck.
very kind of you. Thank you.
Good luck. Great. All right. Now.